We've got some breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ. Multiple reports say that Bears running back David Montgomery is going to be out 4 to 5 weeks with a knee injury. It suffered during the Lions game this past Sunday where Damian Williams came in relief of David Montgomery. Montgomery had 106 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns in that game before leaving with an injury. Dave Richard here with the fantasy impact of the news today. And Dave, what do you think about the Montgomery news that we just learned?
It's a nightmare for fantasy managers, for sure. It's a nightmare for the Bears. He was getting going in that game against the Lions. That offensive line looked better. Remember how bad everybody looked in Chicago against Cleveland? And now here they are playing great, and Montgomery goes down with this injury, and it looked like he was in some serious pain. It looked like a season ender. Thank goodness it's not. The problem is that David Montgomery, the report is 4 to 5 weeks. After their next 5 games, they're on bye. We're probably not going to see David Montgomery until week 11. Expect him to be put on the IR. Fantasy managers should put him in an IR slot or on the bench if they don't have IR slots, but that would stink.
All right, he was a top 12 guy for you. You mentioned it could have been worse, so no torn ACL, but again, a hyperextended knee, and we're anticipating a 4 to 5 week timetable, and Dave laid out a possible return. So we saw Damian Williams there, picked up in the offseason. There's also Khalil Herbert, who got a few carries. So what's the approach from a waiver wire perspective?
We're getting the sense that it'll be Damian Williams who will be the lead back for Chicago. He's the veteran, 29 years old. You look at how he's played since 2018 when he broke out with Kansas City. Averaged 4.7 yards per carry. He's a pretty good pass catcher out of the backfield too, Tommy. 61 grabs in his last 31 games. Chicago will need that element to help replace David Montgomery. Certainly not quite as physical of a running back as David Montgomery, but someone that the Bears can still work with. Khalil Herbert will be right behind him. Williams is going to be the most sought after guy off waivers tonight, tomorrow night. The #1 waiver claim, he's worth it. He's going to be worth at least 25% of your fab. If you have Montgomery and you don't like anybody else that's on waivers and you still got a lot of fab, guess what? You don't need more. You should spend at least half to make sure you get Damian Williams so that he can start for you the next few weeks. But there's a problem, Tommy.
What is that?
The Bears' schedule. The games that David Montgomery is going to miss, it's Las Vegas in week 5. That's a good one. That's perfect. But after that, the Packers, and the Green Bay Packers always play Chicago tough. At Tampa Bay in week 7 is a nightmare. San Francisco in week 8. At Pittsburgh in week 9. And then I told you about that bye in week 10. So Montgomery is actually missing the worst part of the schedule for the season. He might have been a buy low candidate had he stayed healthy and gone through those games against the Packers, Bucks, Niners, Steelers. He wouldn't have had great numbers in those games anyway. Now he's actually going to look great when he comes back. He'll be healthy, he'll be fresh, and it'll be Damian Williams and Khalil Herbert that have to deal with those tough run defenses.
All right, so you had him as a RB1. We're taking a look at Damian Williams, of course, with the anticipation, much like a Chuba Hubbard, that he can come in, perhaps be a high-end flex or an RB2. Lastly here, if you have Allen Robinson, maybe you took a flyer on Cole Kmet, the Justin Fields aspect of this, not having David Montgomery, what do you think that'll be like for him?
Well, listen, it might not be him because the Bears are talking like Andy Dalton will be the quarterback eventually again, which makes no sense to me. Play the kid at this point. I think it's going to put more pressure on him, obviously. If you don't have David Montgomery there, you're not going to feel quite as good about the run game. And we've seen how Justin Fields deals with pressure, physical pressure. It's terrible. But the mental pressure, we'll see if he can actually balance with that. Not amazing numbers against Detroit, not a lot of rushing yards against Detroit. I'm starting to get nervous that he won't break out this year and it'll be a 2022 deal for him. And if he doesn't break out, and if Andy Dalton isn't very good, then you can't feel great about Allen Robinson. Cole Kmet shouldn't be on fantasy rosters. And Darnell Mooney is someone I would only really want to trust if Justin Fields is under center because Andy Dalton isn't really targeting receivers downfield very much, and that's where Mooney really gets his numbers.
Mooney 5 for 125 with Justin Fields.
He's got better numbers this year than Allen Robinson. It's
That's crazy. It certainly is, but you know what? As Dave knows, that's fantasy. Appreciate it, Dave. All right, I want to let you know about fantasy football today, both the podcast and the show. Podcast version, of course, with Adam Azer, Dave Richard, Jamie Eisenberg, Heath Cummings, Ben Schrager. And the show, of course, with guys like Pete Prisco chiming in on a weekly basis. Make sure you download and follow, rate, and review the guys today.
Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.